So in the last class, we have discussed what are the different types of inflammatory bowel disease, what are the causes of IBD, and what is the pathogenesis of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and what are the clinical findings of IBD, and what are the diagnostic methods that we use to detect to diagnose the inflammatory bowel disease, and also we have discussed about the non-pharmacological treatment of inflammatory bowel disease. So today now in this class we are going to discuss pharmacological treatment of both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Okay. So ulcerative colitis. So in this ulcerative colitis, the most of the drugs that which are used in IBD are aminosalicylates, glucocorticoids, immunosuppressive agents, and antimicrobials and agents to inhibit tumor necrosis factor. As we said, in pathogenesis TNF alpha is produced, so we are using agents to inhibit TNF alpha and leukocyte adhesion, and agents to inhibit leukocyte adhesion and migration. So the drugs which are aminosalicylates, glucocorticoids, and immunosuppressive agents like azathioprine, mercaptopurine, cyclosporin, and methotrexate. So these are the immunosuppressive agents that are commonly used in case of ulcerative colitis. And antimicrobials like metronidazole and ciprofloxacin are being used. And the agents that inhibit the TNF alpha, and that is anti-TNF alpha antibodies, are used. And migration and the agents that inhibit the migration, so that is caused by natalizumab. So these are the drugs commonly used for ulcerative colitis. So you have to go through the mechanism of action of all these kind of drugs. Okay, as already you studied in pharmacology, so once again revise these topics once. And in case when the ulcerative colitis is mild to moderate, so then how do we manage this ulcerative colitis? So if the patient has mild to moderate, first we'll treat the patient on on an OP basis, that is outside patient. OP basis will treat the patient. So for that, in that condition, we'll be giving oral or topical mesalamine, which is an aminosalicylate. So we'll be starting the patient on topical mesalamine or oral mesalamine tablets form, in tablet or capsule form. So when we are giving it orally, we have to give it as the dose of 4 grams per day to 6 grams per day of sulfasalazine is required to attain control of active inflammation. If there is any active inflammation, we have to go for sulfasalazine. So it also comes under aminosalicylate. Okay. So sulfasalazine therapy should be instituted at 500 mg per day. First, initially we have to give the dose of 500 mg per day, and then we have to increase it slow by slow. Like step by step, we have to increase the dose till we can reach 4 grams per day of the dose can be given. So depending on the patient's tolerability, we'll start or we'll initiate the dose of 500 mg per day, and later, depending on the severity of the condition and response of the patient, and depending on his tolerability, we can increase the dose till 4 grams per day. Okay. Oral mesalamine derivatives are reasonable alternatives to sulfasalazine. So oral mesalamine derivatives can be used instead of sulfasalazine for the treatment of ulcerative colitis, as they are better tolerated. Compared to sulfasalazine, mesalamine derivatives can be easily tolerated. So that is the reason we will be using oral mesalamine derivatives most commonly. Okay, so in case of mild to moderate disease, initially we'll start the patient on oral or topical mesalamine derivatives. Mesalamines like sulfasalazine can be given in the initiation dose of 500 mg per day, and till 4 grams per day we can give the dose. And compared to sulfasalazine, which is more tolerable, oral mesalamine derivatives are more tolerable. And then if the disease is moderate to severe disease, then along with this oral mesalamine or aminosalicylates, we'll start the patient with steroids. So steroids are used in the treatment of moderate to severe ulcerative colitis when the patients are unresponsive to only single mesalamines. Like with individual mesalamines, if the patient is not responding, then we'll add steroids. Like prednisolone tablets can be given, like 40 to 60 mg per day can be given depending on the tolerability. And then infliximab for those who are unresponsive to steroids. So if these people are not responding to even to steroids, then we'll go for infliximab or other immunosuppressive agents. Okay, if the even after using oral mesalamines along with steroids, or we are using infliximab in case of instead of steroids or other immunosuppressive agents, either of these can be given. Even though if after giving all this, if the patient is not responding, then we consider it as severe or intractable disease. So in that condition, we'll be starting the patient on IV steroids. So in that moderate condition, we have given oral steroids, but now in this condition, we'll be giving intravenous steroids. That is hydrocortisone, Hycort. It's available like a 50 mg, 100 mg, like that. Hydrocort will be available. So it can be given. It can be given in a, like for a day. We can give up to 300 mg daily in either in 3 divided doses. As I said that 100 mg of hydrocort is available, right? So it will be given for 3 days, like 3 times in a day. Or 50 mg, 50 mg also can be used depending on the condition or severity of the patient. If we are not giving hydrocortisone, other kind of steroids that we can give is methylprednisolone. It can be given as 60 mg once daily. So it is considered as a first line agent for treating ulcerative colitis. Okay, either IV hydrocortisone till 300 mg, which can be given in 3 divided doses, or methylprednisolone 60 mg once daily can be given. So it is considered as a first line agent of treatment in case of severe ulcerative colitis. So then a trial of steroids is given before proceeding to colectomy. If we are planning for colectomy, so initially we can give a trial with steroids. If the patient is responding to steroids, we can stop. We cannot, no, it's not required to go for colectomy. So we have to give a trial of steroids. So until the condition is rapidly deteriorating. So if the condition is not rapidly deteriorating, then we can give this trial, or else we should not go for trial and error studies. Directly we have to go for colectomy. And then cyclosporin 2 to 4 mg per kg per day is a typical dose range utilized and may delay deteriorating. So if the condition is about to deteriorate, that means if the condition is going to worsen at that time, that can be prolonged. That duration of deterioration can be prolonged by the use of cyclosporin. What is cyclosporin? As I said that, so these are the like cyclosporin is an autoimmune, like it's an immunosuppressive agent. So it can be given to prolong the duration of deterioration. And then patients, if they are not even responding to IV doses of or parenteral corticosteroids, even after administering them for 3 to 7 days, so at that conditions, we can go for immunosuppressive agents. So they can be given cyclosporin or infliximab, which are the immunosuppressive agents. So if there is a chance, like if we are going to go for colectomy, then we have to start or put them on IV infusion of these immunosuppressants. So these are the drugs: sulfasalazine, mesalamine suppositories, mesalamine enema, mesalamine olsalzine, balsalzide. So balsalzide is commonly used generally in nowadays. And so these are these aminosalicylates: azathioprine, cyclosporin, mercaptopurine, methotrexate, adalimumab. All these are immunosuppressive agents. Budesonide is a steroid. So these are the brand names available, and so these are the doses available in the market. On usual range is the like per day range of this disease given in this table. So if the disease is if the disease is recurring, then we have to put the patient on remission treatment. That is, maintenance has to be done even after even after curing the patient from acute inflammation. Then also we have to consider giving the treatment for a duration of time in order to prevent from recurrent attacks. So for remission or maintenance therapy, what are the drugs used are oral agents, like including sulfasalazine, mesalamine, balsalazide. So these are all effective options for maintenance therapy. Balsalazide is the commonly used that I have come over, like among all the cases I have seen, balsalazide is I have seen, which is commonly given for ulcerative colitis as a maintenance therapy. So what is the dose? The optimal dose to prevent relapse is 2 to 2.4 grams per day of mesalamine, which is equivalent with rates of relapse over 6 to 12 months reported as 40%. That means when the patient is put on this maintenance therapy, the chances of relapse or recurrent attacks is decreased to a 40% of the chances has been decreased. Steroids should be gradually withdrawn after remission. So once we put the patient on steroids, so initially, if the disease is very severe, we'll put him on IV steroids. Then we'll change to convert to oral steroids. Then we'll decrease the dose from TID to BD to OD. And then slowly, gradually, we have to stop or we have to withdraw this use of steroids in case of maintenance or of remission. So if you see this chart, you can see this. If there is a mild disease, mild to moderate, then we'll go for oral aminosalicylates, or also we'll go for oral aminosalicylates. If it is like colitis, then we'll go for either oral mesalamine or sulfasalazine or budesonide. Budesonide is a steroid. Either of these three can be used. If the disease is remission, that means if there is recurrent attacks or we have to maintain this treatment, then we'll decrease the dose from then we'll decrease the dose. Even here also the same thing. If the disease is like moderate to severe, then we'll go for sulfasalazine or mesalamine. Along with that, we'll add steroid. Here, either of the steroid or aminosalicylate can be given. Here, the combination of aminosalicylate and steroid is been given. So once there is remission, then we have to decrease the dose of these steroids and also decrease the dose of sulfasalazine. If there is remission, this is enough. But if the patient is not responding to this prednisolone and sulfasalazine combination, then we have to stop this prednisone, and instead of this prednisone, we have to start the patient with azathioprine or mercaptopurine. So we have to add some immunosuppressive agents, and then we have to check for remission. And then if the disease is from severe to fulminant, then we have to start the patient on IV steroids. Either IV steroids, even after keeping the patient on IV steroids, if there is no response in 5 to 7 days, then we have to go for IV immunosuppressive agents, and this can be given prior to colectomy also. If even if there is a remission, then we have to change this steroid like hydrocortisone. Instead of that, we can go for prednisolone or methylprednisolone, and then we can add these immunosuppressive agents. And then if there is remission, then we can give this TNF alpha inhibitor, that is natalizumab, can be given. Okay, so this is regarding ulcerative colitis. And then coming to Crohn's disease. So Crohn's disease, if it is like active Crohn's disease is there, then again here also first we have to go with mesalamine derivatives. Generally it is available in the brand names of Pentasa and Asacol. So these are like these will release the drug slowly. So maybe more effective. So these are more effective than sulfasalazine for ileal involvement. If there is an involvement of ileum, then we have to go for Pentasa or Asacol. And then oral corticosteroids like prednisone can be given like 40 to 60 mg per day. And then budesonide like 9 mg daily can be given for mild to moderate, or mild to moderate and ascending colonic disease. We can go for budesonide or prednisolone. And then metronidazole. Metronidazole is an antibiotic. It is given orally as 10 to 20 mg per kg per day in divided doses. Generally, it is available as 400 mg. It will be available as a vial of 100 ml, which contains 400 mg of the drug. Generally in the market, it is available in that form. It may be useful for perineal disease, like if there is an inflammation in the perirectal region or perianal region. For that purpose also, we can go for this metronidazole. And also those who are not responding to sulfasalazine. And then azathioprine and mercaptopurine, as we all know that these two are immunosuppressive agents. So these are effective in maintaining steroid-induced remission. Okay, so the dose for azathioprine is 2 to 3 mg per kg per day, and this mercaptopurine is 1 to 1.5 mg per kg per day. So patients deficient in TPMT are at great risk of bone marrow suppression. If they are not having TPMT, So they are at risk of developing bone marrow suppression because of using this azathioprine and mercaptopurine. So when we are giving this azathioprine, mercaptopurine, as they are immunosuppressive agents, if the patient has deficient TPMT enzyme, then it will further cause the bone marrow suppression. That means blood production will not be taken place properly. So determination of TPMT or TPMT genotype is recommended to guide dosage. So prior to starting the patient on azathioprine and mercaptopurine, we have to check the patient whether he is whether he is having any genetical defect regarding this TPMT genotype. Okay, so then only we have to start this azathioprine and mercaptopurine, or else the patient may get bone marrow suppression. Okay. And then cyclosporin for patients with symptomatic and severe perianal or cutaneous fistulas. If there is any severe perianal or cutaneous fistulas, then we can start the patient on cyclosporin. So it is available in the form of oral dose of 5 mg per kg per day, was not effective. So whereas when we give this 5 mg per kg per day, the dose is not effective. That means that is not sufficient. Only when we give 7.9 mg per kg per day, that dose was found to be effective in case of periannular cutaneous fistulas. And then methotrexate, it is also an immunosuppressive agent which is given as weekly injection of 25 mg. Like if we give this injection like 25 mg on this Thursday, again on next Thursday, we have to give the same injection at the same time, approximately. So this is given for induction of remission and for maintenance therapy. So for maintenance therapy, we'll be giving this methotrexate 25 mg IV injection for every 1 week. So when we give methotrexate, what was the risk? There is a risk of again bone marrow suppression and hepatotoxicity and pulmonary toxicity. So these are the risks when we use methotrexate. So we have to check the LFT when we are injecting this methotrexate, and also we have to check whether there is any abnormalities or any deviations in these pulmonary parameters like liver function test and lung function test. If they are like pulmonary function test, we have to check whether there is any deviation. And then infliximab. So when it is used for treating fistulas. So infliximab also used in case of fistulas. So it is available as a single 5 mg per kg infusion is available when given every day which can be given every day for 8 weeks. Additional doses at 2 and 6 weeks, like for 8 weeks, every 1 week we can give this. If you want these additional doses, like if it is required to give these additional doses, we can give it 2 and 6 weeks following the initial dose in high response rates. So patients may develop antibodies to infliximab, which can result in serious infusion reactions and loss of drug response. So on long term, if you are giving IV infusing this infliximab regularly, so the patients may develop antibodies to this infliximab. As it is an immunosuppressive agent, so our body may develop some kind of antibodies to infliximab. So thereby the effect of this infliximab will be reduced, so that the response of the drug cannot be seen clearly. Okay, and then adalimumab and certolizumab. So these are effective in patients with moderate to severe Crohn's disease. So who are not responding properly to infliximab, then we can go for adalimumab and certolizumab. And then natalizumab. So when we'll give natalizumab, when the patient is not responding to any of these medications, only that in that conditions or only in that cases we have to go for natalizumab, in which the patients who is not responding properly either to steroids or TNF alpha inhibitors, then only we have to go for natalizumab. Okay. So here this is the chart regarding Crohn's disease. When the disease like mild to moderate or ileocolonic or colonic. So if it is like ileocolonic or colonic, we'll give sulfasalazine or oral mesalamine or metronidazole with or without ciprofloxacin. If there is kind of infection or putrefaction, then we have to go for antibiotic. And then if there is if it is in the region of perianal region, then we give along with metronidazole and oral sulfasalazine or mesalamine. If it is there in the small bowel, along oral mesalamine or metronidazole and budesonide 9 mg per day for terminal ileal or ascending colonic disease can be given. If it is like moderate to severe, so along with the oral aminosalicylates and antibiotic, we are going to add this steroid. Okay. So in case of steroid and remission, like remission, maintenance of remission because of the steroids, so we can add infliximab or like we can add immunosuppressive agents. Then we have to check the response. If the response is okay, then we have to taper the dose of prednisolone after 2 to 4 weeks. And then and also we need to add this immunosuppressive agents. Even if there is no response, then we have to change from then we have to change it to finally to natalizumab. If the condition is very severe, so initially we have to start the patient or put the patient on IV steroids, and we have to check for the response. If the patient is not responding properly, then we have to give IV cyclosporine or infliximab if not accepted prior. Like if patient is not responding to IV cyclosporine, then we have to go for IV infliximab. So what could be the complications of these Crohn's disease and how could we manage this? So I said that toxic megacolon. That means due to severe infection, it will be having severe inflammation and the size will be enlarged. That we call it and it will be filled with infection. So we call it as toxic megacolon. So the treatment mainly includes, so first in that condition the patient will be in very septic condition. So we have to maintain like we have to bring the patient to normal condition. So first we have to go for surgical intervention and have to keep the patient on antimicrobials, so in order to stop that infection. And then aggressive fluid and electrolyte management. So because of this, as in case of severe conditions there will be diarrhea, right? So when there is diarrhea there will be dehydration. So in order to manage again, or in order to return back this dehydration condition, we have to give aggressive fluid and electrolyte should be given IV. And then if there is severe rectal bleeding or if there is any bleeding rectally, then we have to give blood replacement should be given. And then steroids should be given in high dosages in order to reduce acute inflammation. So if there is an acute inflammation, immediately we have to give this steroids in IV route, that is hydrocortisone 100 mg IV for every 8 hours. That means in a day we can give 3 times in a day. And then antibiotics like broad spectrum antimicrobials should be given as a primitive therapy in perforation. So in order to prevent it from perforation, or if at all if there is any perforation, we have to start on higher antibiotics. So the systemic manifestations other than this related to colon or arthritis. So if there is an arthritis, there will be swelling in the joint region. So the patient will be complaining regularly of pain and edema over there. So for that, we'll be giving the patient or we'll be treating the patient with aspirin or other NSAIDs and corticosteroids. Either NSAIDs alone or we can add this corticosteroids combination. So as we said that already in the etiology, we have studied that NSAIDs will exacerbate they are the reason for causing inflammatory bowel disease. So we have to, but here we have to use, so we'll reduce the dose. And also we have to check for whether there is any GI bleeding, because the NSAIDs cause decrease in the prostaglandin production. So thereby mucous lining will be ruptured, thereby there is a chance of bleeding even in the upper GI tract. So when we are giving these NSAIDs in case of arthritis, which is caused due to IBD, in that conditions we have to rule out, or we have to check regularly for any chances of or any identities of GI bleeding. And then anemia is the main cause. Why? Because it will be having rectal bleeding. So as I said that microvasculature will be heavy in the rectal region. So when there is any inflammation, it causes severe bleeding. So because of that, there will be anemia. So this is caused due to blood loss from the GI tract. So it can be treated with ferrous sulfate, like oral iron tablets can be given, like ferrous sulfate can be given. If the patient is having vitamin B12 deficiency or folic acid deficiency, why this deficiency is given? Because vitamin B12, folic acid and all this gets absorbed from the large intestine. As already it is having inflammation, these kind of things can't be absorbed from the intestine, right? So in order to balance that deficiencies, we'll be giving vitamin B12 or folic acid supplements if required, depending on the values of the depending upon the normal values and the range, we'll be giving these supplementations. So here these are the drugs which are used generally for treating Crohn's disease, and what are the adverse drug reactions involved, and what are the monitoring parameters. So when sulfasalazine is given, what we have to monitor, we have to check for folate, complete blood count, liver function test, serum creatinine, blood urea nitrogen. So when we are giving this, we have to check for these parameters, whether they are normal or not. When we are giving mesalamine also, we have to check for mesalamines, we have to check whether there is any GI disturbances. If we are giving corticosteroids, we have to regularly monitor this blood pressure and fasting lipid panel. That is fasting lipid profile also we have to monitor. So for corticosteroids, we should avoid long-term use if possible, or consider budesonide. That means instead of methylprednisolone and hydrocortisone, we can use budesonide. And then when patient is on corticosteroids, the major most common adverse drug reactions: hyperglycemia, osteoporosis, hypertension, edema, infection, myopathy, and psychosis. So for this, we have to monitor like glucose, vitamin D, bone density. We have to check. Bone density helps to rule out osteoporosis. When there is osteoporosis, the bone density will be lost. So that it gets easily broken down. And then when we are giving azathioprine or mercaptopurine, we have to, it causes bone marrow suppression. All these immunosuppressive agents cause bone marrow suppression and pancreatitis. So we have to check complete blood count. So in order to know what was the hemoglobin level. And also that check TMPT activity, as I said, before starting azathioprine or mercaptopurine, we have to check for genetical defect, whether if the patient is having any TMPT genetical defect. If the patient is having, then we should not start him on azathioprine or mercaptopurine. And then methotrexate, even it also causes bone marrow suppression. So for this also we have to check this complete blood count, serum creatinine and blood urea nitrogen. And then if there is any pregnancy or checkline baseline pregnancy test have to be done, because this is contraindicated in case of pregnant women. So we have to check before starting this, we have to check whether the patient is pregnant. And also it causes some certain liver lung infections like pneumonitis, pulmonary fibrosis, and hepatitis. So we have to go for liver function test also and chest x-ray also. And then infliximab, it causes infusion related reactions. That means decreased response after using this infliximab for a longer duration. So we have to check blood pressure and heart rate regularly. And then adalimumab, it causes heart failure, optic neuritis, demyelination, injection site reaction. That means when we are giving this IV injection, it causes some kind of rash over there. So we have to check, and also we have to rule out the signs of infection. And then certolizumab, it causes lymphoma. So we have to check these concentrations of infliximab in this blood when we are giving certolizumab. And then natalizumab, it is a final and the last drug of choice. So it also causes some kind of infusion related reactions. That means the patient may not respond to the drug after long-term usage of these drugs. So when we are giving this natalizumab, we have to check this brain MRI, mental disorders, what was the mental status of the patient after taking this natalizumab. And then progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. So all the parameters which are related to brain has to be checked when we are giving the patient natalizumab as an IV dose. So as in active Crohn's disease, mesalamine, immunosuppressants, and then corticosteroids, and what were the drugs and what were the doses that we have to see. So how do we treat complications? So in complications, we have to add, along with all these aminosalicylates and steroids, we'll be adding these antibiotics and also immunosuppressive agents. Okay. So after giving the treatment, what can we expect from the patient as a response after taking treatment? So patients receiving sulfasalazine should receive oral folic acid. So as I said that those who are kept on sulfasalazine, there is a chance of bone marrow suppression. So so prior to that only we have to start the patient on oral folic acid supplementation. Why? Because sulfasalazine inhibits folic acid absorption. So we have to start the patient on oral folic acid. Okay. And then the success of therapeutic regimen to treat IBDs can be measured by patient complaints. Like when the patient, when the patient comes for review, depending on what are the complaints given and what are the signs and symptoms. So all these things which when doctor and patient gets interacted, depending on that only we can judge the success of this therapeutic regimen. So some like physical examinations can be done, and then laboratory tests. So these are the tests in order to done. All these are done in order to identify or to rule out the success of therapeutic regimen. So there is an index called the Crohn's disease activity index. So it uses a kind of scale in order to evaluate of the patients receiving this drug in the clinical trial. So what is this scale? It includes are 8 elements. It includes 8 elements. It includes 8 elements. What Crohn's disease activity includes 8 elements. So what are the parameters it includes are number of stools in the past 7 days. As I said that the main symptom will be diarrhea. So we have to rule out, we have to know, or we have to record this number of stools in the past 7 days, and then sum of abdominal pain ratings from the past 7 days. That means every day how was the pain. So first day severe, second day severe, third day severe, fourth day moderate, fifth day moderate, sixth day mild. So we have to, depending on all this, we have to take an average and we have to see how was the rating of the pain during the past 7 days after initiating this treatment. Okay. And then rating of general well-being in the past 7 days. So how was the patient in the past 7 days? And use of antidiarrheals, like how many antidiarrheals he has used in order to stop this diarrhea, and also the body weight, because in case of Crohn's disease, a patient will be in dehydration, so he may lose weight. So we have to check the body weight also, and hematocrit. If there is any rectal bleed, there will be decrease in the hematocrit. So we have to take this also into consideration. And finding of abdominal mass. As I said that in Crohn's disease, we can feel kind of abdominal mass can be seen. So that also will be considered as a parameter. And then a sum of symptoms present in the past week. So, or like a conclusion or an average of what are the symptoms he has experienced in the past week will be considered. So these elements may be useful in assessing the effectiveness of treatment regimen. So these will be having some kind of points. So taking on an average of all these things will consider the effectiveness of the treatment regimen. So it's not like that only this scale is there, but here in this scale is used, but different clinical trials, different studies use different types of scales of their own personalized scales they will be used. They will use. And then other, I said that perianal CD activity, Crohn's disease activity index, it is used for perianal Crohn's disease. So standard assessment tools for ulcerative colitis include, so this is regarding perianal Crohn's disease, and standard assessment tools for ulcerative colitis include stool frequency, how was the frequency of the stools, like how many times the patient has passed the stools, presence of blood in the stool, and like occult blood will be there in case of inflammatory bowel disease, so presence of blood in the stool, and mucosal appearance from endoscopy that can be seen, and then physician's global assessment based on physical examination, endoscopy and laboratory data. If there is an abdominal mass or fissures or fistulas, that can be identified when the patient is physically examined. And then endoscopy, in endoscopy we can see these any inflammation, and if there is any stenosis in the lumen of this bowel wall, or if there is any stricture, that can be identified through endoscopy, but we can call it as colonoscopy compared rather than endoscopy. And then laboratory data, so all these things can be used for evaluating the therapeutic outcome of the regimen. Okay, so this is what here we're explaining regarding the treatment of, like, pharmacological treatment of inflammatory bowel disease. So what are the drugs commonly used are aminosalicylates like mesalamine, sulfasalazine, and then steroids. In steroids, what are the drugs used commonly? Methotrexate, hydrocortisone, prednisone, budesonide. So these are the drugs used. And immunosuppressive agents like infliximab and natalizumab. So these are the immunosuppressive agents, and antimicrobials like metronidazole and ciprofloxacin. So these are the drugs commonly used. So depending on the stage of the ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, will be changing the doses. Okay, I think it's clear for you, and thank you all.